Hey everyone, and welcome back to Patrol Clip. As a medium, film appeals to every generation, often allowing children and adults to engage on different levels. For instance, there are plenty of scary movies from your childhood you could revisit as an adult and wonder why your parents ever let you watch them in the first place. If you ever look back on bizarre 90s cartoons or frightening stop-motion flicks, you'll see that the adult creators have exposed kids to years of nightmares. Plenty of obscure kids' movies scare adults, but well-known films can do the same. Whether a character design proves unintentionally nightmarish or an inane romp masked in an existentially distressing thrill ride, one thing is clear when revisiting certain beloved films from your childhood. Horror is far from the only genre that can keep you up at night. So let's take a look at our top 10 Halloween horror movies that scared more adults than the kids. But before we begin, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more amazing content.
8 more days to Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. 8 more days to Halloween, Silver Shamrock.
Number 10. When stipulations in Steven Spielberg's E.T. contract prevented him from directing a follow-up to Close Encounters, he tapped Tobe Hooper to helm Poltergeist. When Hooper, the director behind the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, balked at the sci-fi elements of the original pitch, the script was reworked as a ghost story centered on the Freeling family. Poltergeist continues to shock over 30 years later thanks to its usage of practical effects such as the child-hungry malevolent tree or the gale force winds that violently whip characters around the set. The film also conveys the eternal worry of parents losing their children that likely went over the heads of younger moviegoers. The myth surrounding Poltergeist also contributes to its notoriety, as it's famously achieved a cursed status due to a number of its performers passing away prematurely, chief among them Heather O'Rourke. As the Freeling family's daughter who first contacts the ghost, O'Rourke appeared in the next 2 Poltergeist films before tragically dying at age 12 due to cardiac arrest and septic shock. Rest in peace, little one. Number 9. The Witches. A Roald Dahl adaptation from Jim Henson Productions and director Nicholas Roeg, the 1990s The Witches is best remembered for its grotesque interpretation of the novel's central cast of supernatural, child-hating monsters. The film employs a generic enough setup for younger viewing horror. After Luke Eversham's parents die, he becomes the ward of his Norwegian grandmother who warns him about malicious witches bent on eradicating kids. Doesn't that sound delightful? Though initially skeptical, Luke discovers the truth when he stumbles upon the beings his grandmother warned him about. Luke is turned into a mouse, after which he's compelled to fight his way back to his former self. The natural states of the Coven's witches make for the most lastingly disturbing elements of the film. Employing all the effects mastery that made him a household name, Henson's witches are horrific, with dripping extremities and funhouse mirror eyes, noses, and lips. Their visual creepiness lingers in pop culture more than any element of the plot. Number 8.
Don't look under the bed.
For anyone who considers themselves a 90s baby, October meant 13 Nights of Halloween and the Disney Channel getting spooky, bringing you original classics like Halloween Town and Twitches. But you may not remember Disney Channel's all-time scariest original movie, Don't Look Under the Bed. An unknown boogeyman keeps pulling teenage pranks all over Francis McCausland's high school, and people think Francis is responsible. A boogeyman who paints bees in people's lockers and pouring gelatin in the swimming pool might not sound scary, but just you wait. This isn't Mom's Got a Date with a Vampire. According to the film, when a child stops believing in their imaginary friend, it becomes a boogeyman. So basically, this monster is Freddy Krueger, and that's kind of scary, because it's all in your head. Francis's own imaginary friend turns into a terrifying monster when a series of hardships forces her to grow up. Her imaginary pal, Larry Houdini, originally suave and sweet, ends up growing fangs, sharp nails, and his eyes turn purple, a visual nightmare for children and adults alike. So remember kids, never stop believing in your IFs. Number 7. Coraline. Okay, so personal note, this movie is definitely creepy as hell, but in a cool way. With films like Kubo and Two Strings and Paranorman, Phil Knight's animation studio, Leica, has fully cemented its reputation as a premier stop-motion animation house. But the company first signaled its promise with 2009's Coraline, an adaptation of the Neil Gaiman YA novella of the same name. Coraline boasts ambitious visuals, an inventive world, and some downright unsettling elements. It centers on the titular Coraline Jones, voiced by Dakota Fanning, a disaffected teen who resents her parents for moving the family to Oregon. When she stumbles upon a hidden passageway in her new home, however, she discovers a lively and insidious parallel reality where the more frightening elements of the film begin. Most notably, the bizarro version of her mother pushes Coraline to replace her eyes with buttons to allow her entry into the docile populace of the parallel world, where she'll stay forever. Nice. While the film's balance of macabre elements and stunning design prevents it from being an out-and-out horror film, the dark turns are what makes it a fun ride. Things can still be off-putting, however, like the question of what the other mother does with her victim's eyes. Yeah, I have to kind of wonder that myself.
Number 6. Leprechaun.
The 1993 film Leprechaun is best known as Jennifer Aniston's feature debut, but it also launched one of the strangest franchises in horror. Helmed by Mark Jones, multiple sequels followed that saw the central monster terrorizing everything from space to the inner city. Twice. The plot centers on Dan O'Grady, played by Shay Duffin, stealing a leprechaun's pot of gold and enraging its murderous owner.
So you want me pot of gold, do you?
O'Grady eventually traps the creature in a crate using a 4-leaf clover, but the leprechaun resumes his reign of terror and searches for the lost gold when the charm is accidentally removed a decade later. Admittedly an odd and campy piece of comic horror, Leprechaun remains unsettling today for the sheer grotesqueness of the title character's design. Plus, it trades on a number of lazy Irish jokes, including one directly inspired by a dispute with the makers of Lucky Charms. Go figure. Number 5. Gremlins. With his 1984 Christmas set horror comedy Gremlins, Joe Dante nabbed the single biggest hit of his career. The film, which centers on the misadventures of a big-eared, doe-eyed curiosity known as a mogwai, netted just shy of $150 million domestically and became a seminal film of the 80s. Its status as a classic warrants some consideration, as it's an unabashedly bizarre and violent movie. At its outset, an offensively rendered Chinese shopkeeper, played by Key Luke, sets off the mogwai Gizmo, informing the buyer of a set of rules. Gizmo cannot be exposed to sunlight, get wet, or be fed after midnight. Once all three are summarily ignored, gremlins burst forth from Gizmo's back and destroy the film's bucolic small-town setting. Their riotous mobbing even leads to the demise of an overzealous science teacher. Most children were too young to understand the films that were being parodied by Gremlins, but that didn't stop their parents from letting them watch it. After all, when the rules are followed, Gizmo is nothing but a cute little mogwai.
Mogwai.
Number 4. The Adventures of Mark Twain.
What happens when classic American literature meets American gods? In The Adventures of Mark Twain, the famed author is on a stop-motion animated quest to meet Halley's Comet for an appointment. During Twain's already strange journey to meet a comet, Tom Sawyer, Huck Finn, and Becky Thatcher join Twain in his airship, and all of them sporting faces that look nothing like human children. When the children realize the author may not ever take them back down to Earth again, they attempt to wrest control from Twain to bring themselves home. Little do they know, however, they find themselves in a Breakfast of Champions scenario, where the creations, also known as the characters, are at the mercy of their creator, the writer. The message may be lost on children, but to an adult, these things get a bit too existential. Number 3. Mirror Mask. Neil Gaiman and the Jim Henson Company made a film for kids that's more likely to appeal to your moody adolescent self than children. Mirror Mask follows Helena, the daughter of circus performers who longs for normalcy. She basically Alice in Wonderlands herself into a world of light and shadows, a landscape beautifully executed in CGI and true to Gaiman's dark and surreal appetites. But anyone familiar with Gaiman's work knows how gruesome it gets, especially concerning the film's antagonist, Helena's doppelganger, a black-eyed twin who longs to escape into Helena's reality and nearly succeeds at her villainous agenda, but not before sending Helena through a world of unsettling and twisted characters. This is definitely one of those movies we recommend you check out if you haven't seen it yet. Totally worth it. Number 2. James and the Giant Peach. Yeah, I don't know. There's just something about stop-motion animation that gives rise to the creepy visuals that worm their way into your head and refuse to leave. The combination of jerky movements and chiaroscuro lighting techniques that make them very unnerving, and the 1996 film James and the Giant Peach is a prime example of this. Based on the book by Roald Dahl, director Henry Selick's film boasts everything from nautical ghosts and shark bots to foppish speaking insects. Centered on the titular James Trotter, the film follows his journey from an early run-in with a malevolent rhinoceros-shaped cloud who kills his parents to the very top of the Empire State Building. That's a hell of a ride. What sticks out about the film is the design work. It's imaginative and inventive to the point of unforgettable creepiness. When a shark-shaped submarine emerges from the sea to attack James and his insect compatriots on their journey to New York, for example, it fires a missile bursting with barbs at the peach they've repurposed as a vehicle. This and innumerable other visual choices made the film memorably unsettling. And we love it. And for our number one pick, Return to Oz. Yeah, it's tough making a sequel to what's considered one of the best family films ever, especially when it's also one of the most beloved movies of all time. I mean, even my own dad loved this movie. It's not surprising that Return to Oz, Disney's 1985 follow-up to The Wizard of Oz, failed to reach the same heights as its forebear. The film, however, is fascinating. Return to Oz throws the gauntlet down early by implying that the charms of Oz have left Dorothy in an inescapable funk. When her aunt determines the only way to save her niece from believing in fairy tales is electroshock therapy, things turn to the bizarre and terrifying. Following a lightning strike to the facility she's in, Dorothy winds up back in Oz, only to discover it's become a degraded wasteland. Yowza. Though this alternate route to Oz could have simply been an unconventional one, the film opts for the strangest options again and again. Replacing the Lion and Tin Man as Dorothy's companions, for example, are a talking chicken, a bulbous robot, pumpkin-headed stick figure, and a moose bust. A moose bust. Along with the headless villains, the anthropomorphized rock monsters, and the monkey with wheels for hands, Return to Oz more than takes its case as one of the most bizarre films for kids in the 80s. So, those are the top 10 Halloween horror movies that scared probably more adults than the kids. Do you think we missed any? Be sure to let us know in the comments below, and as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the little notification bell. And until next time.